Chapter 34. Yathrib responsive, torn asunder by enmity and evil. In so describing their people, the 6 recent converts of Yathrib had not exaggerated. The Battle of Bu'ath, the 4th and most savage conflict of the civil war, had not been altogether decisive, nor had it been followed by any peace worthy of the name, but merely by an agreement to stop fighting for the moment. The dangerously prolonged state of chronic bitterness, fraught with an increasing number of incidents of violence, had won over many of the more moderate men of both sides to the opinion that they needed an overall chief who would unite them as Qusay had united Quraysh, and that there was no other solution to their problem. One of the leading men of the oasis, Abd Allah ibn Ubay, was favored by many as a possible king. He had not fought against Aus in the recent conflict, but had withdrawn his men on the eve of the battle. He was nonetheless of Khazraj, and it was exceedingly doubtful whether Aus would be capable of accepting a king who was not of their tribe. The 6 men of Khazraj delivered the message of Islam to as many of their people as would listen to them, and the next summer, that is, in AD 621, 5 of them repeated their pilgrimage, bringing with them 7 others, 2 of whom were of Aus. At Aqaba, these 12 men pledged themselves to the Prophet, and this pledge is known as the first Aqaba. In the words of one of them, "We pledged our allegiance to the Messenger of God on the night of the first Aqaba, that we would associate nothing with God, that we would neither steal, not commit fornication, nor slay our offspring, nor utter slanders, and that we would not disobey him in that which was right. And he said to us, if you fulfill this pledge, then paradise is yours. And if you commit one of these sins, and then receive punishment for it in this world, that shall serve as expiation. And if you conceal it until the day of the resurrection, then it is for God to punish or forgive, even as he will." When they left for Yathrib, the Prophet sent with them Musab of Abd-Dar, who had by that time returned from Abyssinia. He was to recite the Quran to them and give them religious instruction. He lodged with As'ad ibn Zurara, one of the 6 who had entered Islam the previous year. Musab had also to lead the prayer because, despite their Islam, neither Aus nor Khazraj could yet endure to give one another that precedence. The rivalry between the descendants of the 2 sons of Qayla was of long standing. There had been nonetheless frequent intermarriages between the 2 tribes, and as a result of one of these, As'ad, the Khazrajite host of Musab, was the first cousin of Sa'd ibn Mu'adh, chief of one of the clans of Aus. Sa'd strongly disapproved of the new religion. He was therefore angry, yet at the same time embarrassed, to see his cousin As'ad, together with Musab and some newly converted Muslims, sitting one day in a garden in the midst of his people's territory, in earnest conversation with members of his clan. Determined to put an end to such activities, yet not wishing to be involved in any unpleasantness himself, he went to Usaid, who was next in authority to himself, and said, "Go to these 2 men who have come to our quarters to make fools of our weaker brethren." He was no doubt thinking of his younger brother, the now dead Iyas, who had been the first man of Yathrib to enter Islam. "And drive them out, and forbid them to come to our quarters again. If As'ad were not my kinsman, I would save you this trouble, but he is my mother's sister's son, and I can do nothing against him." Usaid took his lance and went and stood over them and said, with as fierce an expression as he could muster, "What brings the 2 of you here to make fools of our weaker brethren? Leave us, if you have any care for your lives." Musab looked at him and said gently, "Why not be seated and hear what I have to say? Then, if it please you, accept it, and if not, keep yourself clear of it." "That is fairly spoken," said Usaid, who liked both the appearance and the manner of the Prophet's envoy, and striking his lance in the ground, he sat down beside them. Musab spoke to him about Islam and recited the Quran to him. and Usaid's expression changed, so that those who were present could see Islam in his face from the light that shone in it, and the repose that softened it even before he spoke. "How excellent are these words, and how beautiful," he said when Musab had finished. "What do you do if you wish to enter this religion?" They told him that he must wash himself from head to foot in order to be purified, and that he must also purify his garments, and then perform the prayer. There was a well in the garden where they were sitting, so he washed himself and purified his garments, and testified, "There is no God but God, and Muhammad is the messenger of God, peace and blessings upon him." They showed him how to pray, and he prayed. Then he said, "There is a man behind me who, if he follow you, will be followed without fail by every man of his people, and I will send him to you now." So he went back to his clansmen, and even before he reached them, they could see that he was a changed man. "What have you done?" said Saad. "I spake to the two men," said Usaid, "and by God I saw no harm in them, but I forbade them to continue, and they said, 'We will do as thou wish.'" "I see you have been of no avail," said Saad, taking the lance from his hand and setting off to where the believers were still sitting peacefully in the garden. He remonstrated with his cousin As'ad and upbraided him for taking advantage of their kinship. But Musab intervened, speaking to him just as he had spoken to Usaid, whereupon Saad agreed to listen to him, and the result was ultimately the same. When Saad had performed the prayer, he rejoined Usaid and those that were with him, and together they went to the assembly of their people. Saad addressed them and said, "What know you of my standing amongst you?" "Thou art our liege lord," they answered, "and the best of us in judgment, and the most auspicious in leadership." "Then I tell you," he said, "I swear I will speak neither to your men nor to your women until ye believe in God and his messenger." And by nightfall there was no man or woman of his clan who had not entered Islam. Musab stayed with Asad for about 11 months, and many were the people who embraced Islam during that time. Then, when the month of the next pilgrimage drew near, he returned to Mecca to give tidings to the Prophet of how he had fared among the various clans of Aus and Khazraj. The Prophet knew that the well-watered land between two tracts of black stones, which he had seen in a vision, was Yathrib, and he knew that this time he too would be of the emigrants. Now there were few people in Mecca whom he trusted so much as his aunt by marriage, al-Fadl. He was also certain that his uncle, Abbas, although he had not entered Islam, would never betray him and never divulge a secret confided to him. So he told them both that he hoped to go and live in Yathrib, and that much depended on the delegation which was expected from the oasis for the coming pilgrimage. On hearing this, Abbas said that he felt it his duty to go with his nephew to meet the delegates and speak with them, and the Prophet agreed. Not long after Musab's departure, some of the Muslims of Yathrib set out upon the pilgrimage, as had been arranged between him and them, in all 73 men and 2 women, hoping to make contact with the Prophet. One of their leaders was a Khazrajite chief named Bara, and during the first days of the journey, a preoccupying thought came over him. They were on their way towards Mecca, wherein was the house of God, the Aqaba, the greatest center of pilgrimage for the whole of Arabia, and therein was also the Prophet, to whom they were going, and it was there that the Quran had been revealed, and quicker their souls were moving ahead of them in aspiration. Was it then right or reasonable, when the time came for prayer, that they should turn their backs on that direction and face towards the north, towards Syria? This may have been more than a mere thought, for Bara had only a few more months to live, and men who are near to death are sometimes gifted with premonitions. However that may be, he told his companions what was in his mind, whereupon they said that as far as they knew, the Prophet was wont to pray towards Syria, that is, towards Jerusalem, and they did not wish to differ from him. "I shall pray towards the Kaaba," said Bara, and he did so throughout the journey, while all the others continued to pray towards Jerusalem. They remonstrated with him to no avail, except that when they arrived in Mecca he had some misgivings, and he said to Ka'b ibn Malik, one of his younger clansmen, and one of the more gifted poets of Yathrib, "Son of my brother, let us go to the messenger of God and ask him about what I did on this journey, for doubts have fallen into my soul through my seeing that you were against me." So they asked a man in Mecca where they could find the Prophet, whom they did not even know by sight. "Know you his uncle Abbas?" said the man, and they replied that they did, for Abbas was a frequent visitor to Yathrib and was well known there. "When ye enter the mosque," said their informant, "he is the man sitting beside Abbas." So they went to the Prophet, who said, in answer to the question of Bara, "You had a direction, if you had but kept to it." Bara took to praying towards Jerusalem once more, in order to do as the Prophet did, though the answer he had received could have been taken in more than one sense. Their journey to Mecca had been in a caravan together with the polytheist pilgrims of Yathrib, one of whom entered Islam in the valley of Mina, an eminent Khazrajite, Abu Jabir, Abdullah ibn Amr, a leader of the Bani Salama, and a man of great influence. It was agreed that they should secretly meet the Prophet as before at Aqaba on the second of the nights, immediately following the pilgrimage. In the words of one of them, "We slept that night with our people in the caravan, until when a third of the night had passed, we crept out from amongst the sleepers to our appointed meeting with the messenger of God, stealing as stealthily as sand-grouse, until we were all assembled in the gully near Aqaba. There we waited until the messenger came, and with him came his uncle Abbas, who was at that time still of the religion of his people, albeit that he wished to be present at his nephew's transaction and to make sure that the promises made to him were reliable. When the Prophet was seated, Abbas was the first to speak. "People of Khazraj," for so the Arabs were wont to address Khazraj and ours, "you know the esteem in which we hold Muhammad, and we have protected him from his people, so that he is honored in his clan and safe in his country. Yet has he resolved to turn unto you and join himself with you. So if you think that you will keep to what you promise him, and that you will protect him against all that shall oppose him, yours be that burden which you have taken upon yourselves. But if you think you will betray him and fail him after he has gone out unto you, then leave him now." "We have heard what you say," they answered, "but speak you, O messenger of God, and choose for yourself and for your Lord what you will." After reciting from Quran and pronouncing a summons to God and to Islam, the Prophet said, "I make with you this pact on condition that the allegiance you pledge me shall bind you to protect me even as you protect your women and your children." Bara rose and took his hand and said, "By him who sent you with the truth, we will protect you as we protect them. So accept the pledge of our allegiance, O messenger of God, for we are men of war, possessed of arms that have been handed down from father to son."